So I've got a few slides, not too many, but just to get you started, we're going to show off with CLI for M365, and we're going to use some of the commands and samples that we have in there. Before we actually get started, if you want to try out the CLI for M365, you can. The idea behind is that we believe that you should be able to manage your M365 environment, M365 tenant from any platform. So the CLI is a cross-platform way of working with your data, calling commands, executing information. And the cool thing about it is that it works on any platform, obviously, because that's the whole idea. And the idea is that you sign in once, that you can interact with the platform and run commands to your tenant. Now, those commands can just be run from any OS, whether it's Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. And they can also be run from any shell, whether you use PowerShell, Windows Terminal, whether you like Bash, Commander, whatever you like. And there's one login. So you sign in once, and then you're validated or authenticated against all the services. Now, from a technology stack, it actually runs on Node.js. So we do need you to have Node.js on your machine. And as soon as you have Node.js, then you can install the CLI. You can do npm install or use yarn for that matter. And once you have it installed, then you need to sign in. We use the Azure Active Directory to make sure that all the requests are secure, that you can do anything you don't have permissions to, that, well, obviously you shouldn't be able to do anything you don't have permissions to, but that you can just do the stuff that you can. But assuming that you've seen that there are samples out there how to get the CLI installed. There's actually, I think I've been a recording at one of these calls like a year ago where we went through. But once you have it installed, you can actually work with it. Now, if you would want to work with some of the commands, let's imagine that you want to work with the HaveIBeenPwned, then to actually run a sample like that, there are just a few commands that you have to run. First of all, you have to get the users that you want to play around with. Maybe you want to get all users, maybe you want to get a subset of users. Then what you actually do is you get the status, the HaveIBeenPwned status per user. And there is an API for that I'm going to show you in a second. Then based on the results, then you want to report problems or you want to report that everything is correct. And then with that sample, you can actually run wherever you like. So you could run it in a Docker container. You can run it in, you can actually orchestrate it with a Logic app, or you can just run it on your machine. So that's the link to that's the link to the demo. Let's have a look. Now, let me close out my my PowerPoint. If you want to get started, we've got documentation out there that explains pretty much everything you need to do. So we've got documentation that helps you get it installed, make sure you're signed in, and if you're good, then as you can see, okay, you can log in. But in my experience, let's do M365 status. You will see that I'm connected, I'm there, everything is correct. Now, what we also have is we've got details on all the commands that we have. So if you're looking to inspiration or just want to know what you can actually do, then here you can see all the different commands that we have. And we've got a command that, well, just gets either your users. So I can go to, okay, Azure Active Directory, user, and I can get a specific user, I get list a specific user, and also here's the documentation around HaveIBeenPwned status, where you can, as you can see, retrieve all the accounts that have been pwned with a specific username. So if you would run this, you actually need a HaveIBeenPwned key, because we're calling the API, you'll need an API key. And if you look at the way that HaveIBeenPwned works, is that if you look at the API or the description of the API, they actually explain what they do. But if you look at the API key, you can just get an API key. You actually have to buy one. It's like, there it is, $3.50 a month. And there is this nice blog post explaining why you actually need to pay for it. I'm more than happy to do that. If you don't, then well, you have bad luck. You can't work with this API without that key. But Once you have an API key, and you actually bought one, and I bought the one for a single month, so I can just play around with it. But once you have that API key, you can actually run a command. So let's do M365 Azure Active Directory user HaveIBeenPwned, pass in a username, pass in that API key. I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna run it. Now, if I run this, what this will do is it will tell me whether, okay, yes, there's been no pwnouts. Everything is done, no problem, it will work. If I would pick another account that I have, it's a similar account, same command. But this will actually tell me, okay, you've been part of breaches. So I've got a Hotmail account. I've had it for, I don't know, like 20 years now. And apparently I signed up for Last.fm, I signed up for Adobe, I signed up for Tumblr. And apparently I've been part of breaches that they have had. Now, luckily, I'm aware, so I've changed my password. Nothing problematic there. But at least now I know that I'm aware of breaches with this account. So this is all you need to do to get the HaveIBeenPwned status for a specific account. Now, coming from there, what you can do is you can come up with some more advanced scenarios. So you could say, okay, we've got a sample script for that, actually. Let's get all users. So walking through the script, what we do is we make sure that you're not logged out. If you're logged out, we ask you to log in. But if you're logged in, then we're going to retrieve all the users, and we're going to get all the Active Directory users. We get their display name and their user principal name. And then what we can do is we can iterate over those different users. And we're going to say, okay, let's write out a statement that we're checking the user, and then we get the status. If the status is no pwnouts found, or is not equal to no pwnouts found, there actually is something, there is a breach. So currently we're just writing it out. Obviously, you can add it to a list and make sure that their passwords have been changed recently, or maybe we want them to let them know that they've been have been breached. So you can do whatever you like with it, but this would just be running. And if I would do the, let me get it, check this one. So let me run this one. And what you will see is it will get all the Active Directory users. And in my environment, I just have a few, like 15. So it will go through all the different users and we'll just say, okay, no breaches found, no breaches found, if there are no breaches found. So this looks good. I mean, no problem here. And I'm going to cancel it because I'm lazy, not want to wait for it. Everything is fine. Coming from there, you can actually come up with some more advanced scenarios. So you could say, instead of getting all users, I want to get all users for a specific SharePoint site, and I want to query those users, and I want to extract from those users only external users. So what this would do is this would pick up a specific site, in this case, my crisis management site that I got from the lookbook, and in there, I'm going to say, okay, give me all the external users. And then rather than putting in the username here, I'm going to put in the user email, because if I do that, there we go. What I then can do is I can say, okay, give me the status for external users on a specific site. So if I would run this, CLI, check, HTTP external, it's going to issue with user Schot@gmail. So apparently I cannot get that status, or no, I can. This actually works correctly. There we go. So issues with, and then I get my my HaveIBeenPwned status. So apparently that account, the Gmail account, has been part of a breach. I actually made a typo, so now it pastes this out wrongly. But the breach that I'm part of is the GFIT breach. So now I know that this external account on this specific site actually is part of a breach. So there is a risk with this external account within my environment. Now, this is still running on my machine. So what I could potentially do is I could potentially run the same script as part of a Docker container. And there has been a recording for that already. But what you would do is it would be slightly different. Let me open I think it's this one. Yeah, so what you do is you would write a bash script, because if you run it in a Docker container, you'll need to run it as a bash script. You would have the pretty much the same symbol where you would say, okay, give me all the external users for a specific site, where the site is something you can specify in your logic app, then run the command and then just get that status and output that status. Now, if you want to run this, what you actually need to do is you'll need to create a logic app. And within that logic app, what you can do is you can create a container group. And in that container group, you can actually pull in the CLI M365 Docker container. Probably should get the latest one, but you can specify the version if you want to. And what we do here is we link it to a specific Git repository. That's something you can see here. That Git repository actually does contain the sample scripts. And what I do is in that Git repository, call my sample script for, pass in the ID of my managed identity, pass in the site that I want to do something with, pass in my HaveIBeenPwned API key. And if I would run this logic app, then it will spin up my Docker container. It will execute this specific script, and it will output all those HaveIBeenPwned statuses. And what we do here is, because we are retrieving the data, if the container is finished, we actually get the logs and then we delete it. Now, you could send the logs as an email, you could parse the logs, you could put it as a adaptive card into Teams. Doesn't really matter what you want to do with it, because you have the logs from the container in your managed identity. There will be a link in the chat with a recording on how to set up the logic app, how to execute the script. If you want to get the sample script, what you actually can do is you can go to our site, you can go to sample scripts, and if you look at the sample scripts, we have all our sample scripts available here. So for the HaveIBeenPwned, the sample script is out there with a short description. If you have any issues, any remarks, anything you want to do, you can always go to our GitHub repository where you can create new issues. We're always looking for ways to improve. So if there's anything you can think of that we should do better, let us know. If you want to help out, there is actually a really good overview of all our good first issues with status open and help wanted. Here you can see that we're currently having 16 open issues, including documentation. If you feel that we should do better there, let us know, including new commands, including feature requests. So there are quite a lot of ways to help us out. And a final shout out, if you're not happy with doing sample scripts, if you actually want to get that HaveIBeenPwned status another way, there recently has been a new independent publisher connection that allows you to do pretty much the same thing using a out-of-the-box flow. So you can get in, let's give it a demo. You'll need that HaveIBeenPwned API key. So what I can do is I can just, oops, wrong one. I can actually get that from, there we go, scripts. I can get it from my sample script. So there we go. I can paste it in there. And as soon as I have a connection, what I can do is I can basically call that same API as I would do in my sample script. I'll need to specify the account, and I can specify whether you want to truncate the responses, filter down the domain, include unverified. So you have some options here as well. It doesn't matter if you like CLI, use CLI. If you want to run it in a container, feel free to run it in a container. If you're looking at Flow, works flawlessly as well. With that, I'm done with my demo.
Awesome stuff, Abby. Just amazing how you're using that to provide value, and really love the crossover, by the way, of the independent publisher connectors. It shows how overarching the entire community is and how there are so many different overlapping circles in the technology that can be utilized. So thank you very, very much for that demo. Well done.
Cool. Thanks for having me.